All right, when a couple decides to file for a divorce, if they're parents, children are likely involved. Oftentimes, both parents neglect to factor how this will affect them. Now, Dr. Keith Kanner is back to help us address this issue and other issues. Welcome back to Prime Time.
Good to be.
Now, there are so many people who have gone through divorce.
About 50%.
50%.
Yeah, it's still there. In fact, it went up a little bit last year. So it's a high number.
And, you know, children cannot be made of pawns, and it's, you know, a lot of parents make the mistake about involving the children, and sometimes it's very hard to do because people are emotional, and
it's true.
You know, you don't really think straight sometimes when your emotions are involved. But for the mental health of the children, you have to separate it, right?
You really have to. You got to make sure that, you know, any discrepancy that you have, you've got to keep away from the kids, especially in a divorce situation. So anything that you're doing with your ex, you've got to do when the kids are gone, or.
And you got, yeah, it's really, there's so many things I could go on and on about it, and every person is different. You have different types of parents dealing with different issues, which is crazy. But let's talk about some of the questions that we have sent in. Can we pull up the first question? Okay, first question is, I have 2 children under the age of 5. How do I explain to my kids that my husband and I are getting a divorce?
Well, you know, that's a really good question, because depending upon the age of a child, they're going to understand what divorce means, or they don't understand what that means. And 2 to 5-year-olds, they don't really understand what that means. So you don't use big words. You know, it's one of those things that parents need to go to the kids together and really very carefully and very empathically talk to them about the fact that, you know, sometimes mommies and daddies can't live together, and we're going to have 2 houses instead of 1. And so you have to be very careful about that, but you don't have to use big words like divorce. But the idea is that you have to secure them that things are going to be okay, even if they're going to be in 2 different houses. But you approach them together and calmly and empathically.
I think it's important because I was told when I was 5 that my parents were separated, and I remember feeling very afraid and scared. And would I see my father? So it's very important. And parents, you suck it up.
Yeah,
you work together with each other. You show each other love and respect in front of your children. I don't care what happened. But the kid becomes the most important thing.
You have to do that. And kids get confused, and they do get worried about, you know, am I not going to see a parent, or you know, where's dad going to live? Where's mom going to live? So you have to be very specific and very careful and caring with them.
What do you think about spinning it and saying, hey, you're going to have 2 rooms instead of 1. We're going to make it, you know, we're going to keep the same system. I think it's also important to kind of keep their schedule and their system, don't you think?
It's absolutely true. You want to keep them on track. That's very important too. And yeah, you do want to be positive to the fact that it's going to be okay. The most important thing that parents need to do with kids and anything is really be the positive spokesperson. It's going to be okay. Give them the encouragement that they're going to get through it. Might be some bumps along the road, but it's going to be okay. And, you know, saying things like 2 rooms, if that might, you know, elevate their spirits a little bit, it's okay. Where it gets difficult is when they're actually in one home and the parents in another home, and that's where it gets kind of tricky.
That's what I was talking about. I was talking about that you would have your another room, another house kind of deal.
Which is nice, but then you miss your father or your mother in the other room. So you have to kind of talk about that too. But you know, it's an adaptation, and if parents do it right,
and if you tell them you're going to raise them together, and it's not there's still love for each other and. Blah, I mean, you just have to make your kid feel secure.
Yeah, and the co-parenting piece is very important. Really got to try to work together. So important.
Okay, let's get on to the next question here. Hold on. All right. What details should I leave out when I tell my kids about the divorce? All the details.
I was going to say, all the details. You don't want to get into the details about what happened. That's not important. The most important thing that you're doing is explaining to them that, you know, sometimes things don't work out, and it happens. And don't get into the details, his fault, her fault. You don't ever want to go there with your kids. And when parents do start talking bad about the other parent, that parent who says bad things is the parent who's going to lose. Because always, because
not sometimes, always.
Always, because it's their mother, it's their father, it's their biological side.
It's like taking punches at them.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
So you know what? You know, take the high road. Really.
And it's hard as parents because sometimes it's situational. Sometimes you're being mistreated, or you're doing all the legwork, and the other parents is like, whatever it is. It's hard to suck it up. But if you love your kids, you just do it.
You have to.
And the payback, the return on sucking it up now, in the future will pay back big time.
There are tons of studies show that parents who actually have good co-parenting skills, their kids do much better than kids who don't.
Yeah, parents.
They really do. It's very important.
And they want both parents around, so you try to share those opportunities, I believe. Okay,
Yeah.
here's our next question.
Okay.
What are some signs that I should be aware of if my son is having trouble coping with divorce?
Well, what we're looking for is a change in behavior or in performance. If things start to go down, fears start developing, grades start going down, they isolate themselves, generally you're looking for something that's changed and it's lasting for a while. All kids go through adjustment with divorce. We call it a regression. But if it goes on for a while, then that's when you have to kind of really work with them and maybe get them some help, but being very supportive. And typically when divorces happen, it takes kids between about 6 months and a year to get just used to the whole concept of what that's going to be like. And so, we do get kind of a dip that happens. But encouragement, positive thinking, moving them on their schedule where they should be really does help.
And don't you think it's important to try to do as much together? Like if you have a soccer game, parents, be friendly with one another. Let your children know there's nothing wrong. They're okay. You guys still like each other.
Right.
They don't want to be between some war.
Yeah.
They want positive energy between the parents.
You've got to be respectful.
Yeah.
Some people argue, should you go on vacation with your ex? And that's when you have to be a little bit careful. If you're too friendly, then the kids are like, well, why aren't you back together again? So it's one of those things where you definitely want to be nice and you want to be supportive and do it for the kids.
All right, we have another question. All right, how do I encourage and teach my child how to maintain a relationship with both parents?
Well, and that one you have to, and this is where it gets kind of tricky. You've got to encourage your child to have a good relationship with your ex. It's very important that you do that. Take that road. So even if things are going on, you want to encourage them to actually go back and talk to that parent if they're having conflicts. And that works really, really well. Rather than the parents talking to each other about things that are going on that are bothering the child, empower your child to go talk to their parent in a nice way. And that's very, very important. So you want to make sure that both parents are really being supportive to the other parent in their respective homes.
I have a question. What if the parent isn't acting appropriately? I have a friend who's dealing with a nasty divorce, and the father is he's not being respectful, he's not being appropriate even with the kid.
To the child or to the
child. The mother's like turned into a mother grizzly bear, like I need to protect my child. Still can't. Sometimes parents are naughty, and if they're hurting inside, they're behaving inappropriately, whatever.
Right, and it is tough, and it's that point where you might encourage your child to say to their dad or their mom, it really hurts my feelings when you do that. If that doesn't work, then the other parent should call and try to be kind of in a supportive way. Look, I know you're upset. We're going through a tough time, but please don't do that. That's only going to make things worse for our kid. So really, put the kids first.
It's funny how many parents cannot set aside their own emotions and their own power trips that they go through in a divorce, because it seems like a lot of power is going on.
Okay, divorce is a major life disruption. Everybody who goes through a divorce goes through major personality changes. The worst things that you possibly used to do come out. It brings out the worst in people. It really does, because you're in trauma, and oftentimes trauma and fighting and reestablishing your life and who you are.
And you're hurt. I mean, no one gets married with a mindset of divorce. You don't have children with someone you think you're going to divorce. So it is,
it's hard.
And so to suck up those emotions and to be strong for your kid, well, that's what you do, parents, when you're.
Yeah, you have to.
If you love your kid, they didn't ask to be born, you suck it up for your children.
You have to. And parents need to get support. I mean, look, you get support from your friends who have gone through divorces, or, get into a group, do something, because it's always nice when you hear other stories from people who have gone through things too, and really build a support system for yourself. Then you don't have to rely on your children. And that oftentimes happens, where parents will sometimes rely on their kids to be like their therapist. Your dad makes me so sad.
They befriend them, they lean on them, they depend on them for it's their job to love the parent instead of the parent's job to love them. They get crazy.
It's not good.
Crazy.
It's not good. That's not good. Don't want to do that.
Thank you for answering these very important questions. And we'll start this series on what to do then. How do you start to date? What do you do when you blend families? We're just getting started.
Good questions.
We're just getting started.
It's good.
Okay, we have to take a quick break. Prime time. We'll be right back.